105.4 RPWP, thepulseradio.com, powered and sponsored by Epic Sports Apparel. On my roundtable discussion this week, we deep in the playoffs. We just had some big time games going on this week. Now we got the regional finals. Man, this guy's one of the experts in the state, definitely in the DFW area. My guy, my fam, Kenny Matthews, the man, the myth from FridayNightGlory.com. Kenny, what's up, baby?
Man, you know I love being with your buddy, my buddy Mark, man.
Man,
On crew.
no doubt, no doubt. I always represent, man. Appreciate you joining me here on Your Mark show, man. Much love. But let's get right down to it, man. Let's start with the big kicker late last night. I happened to be watching this game as well. You kind of made your way around to a few games this week, but Ollie Gordon, if you have not heard of this young man, he is one of the bona fide studs in this area, but I think in the state, he's a junior running back over there. Over almost 50 carries, over 400 yards, 6 TDs, which is a record. He's in the Alvin Kamara type thing now with in that stratosphere now, if you want to say.
Yep.
Trinity takes care of business over Allen 49-45 in an epic battle. Talk about that just a little bit.
Man, Mark, that was just, that's a throwback. That's Earl Campbell. That's throwing and pitching and catching and saying, all right, if it's 35 carries, if it's 40 carries, it's 45 carries, just keep getting up and going. I mean, it became a seesaw game there in the second half pretty much. You kept looking at the clock to say, well, did this team score too soon? Did this team score too soon? Because it kept going back and forth. And it was the battle of the passing game of Allen and the running game of Trinity, obviously. And, and talking to a few guys from Trinity at the end of the game yesterday, I mean, it was, Joseph Luna, he's the fullback for Trinity. He says, this is our game. He said, if the front five guys and I'm doing my job, then that means Mr. Oley's doing his job, because he says we don't have to give him much room. And that's a throwback. I mean, I don't know if will we see somebody have 49 carries again in a playoff game? That's a lot of carries, Mark.
Well, in this day and age, Kenny, you've been around this game a lot, as long as I have.
Yeah.
In this age of spread offenses, that doesn't happen. They spread the ball around a lot. Trinity's still Trinity, 5 yards in a cloud of dust, almost kind of like their mirror image down south in Katy, where as far as they believe in running the ball, big tight ends, big physical offensive line, big fullback. Those guys just straight road rage holes for Mr. Gordon and anybody who totes the rock over there. Allen was kind of the mirror opposite with the spread offense. The quarterback booty spread it around to the Green Twins, and they kept pace. But I think that, Allen, you might agree with this as well, they just kind of wore down up underneath that massive offensive line.
Well, they couldn't stop them. And, I mean, there was a couple times they couldn't get off the field. But I really thought that the key was that when they went up, when Trinity went up, they got the pick. See, nobody had that turnover up until that time. So it was going back and forth, running game, passing game, swapping TDs. But when Schaefer got the interception, that changed the whole dynamic. And then Allen, which we already knew prior to the 40 minutes before then, they could stop the run. Even when it was fourth down, they couldn't stop him. He had the extra effort run. And I was talking to some guys on the sideline. I said, there's a reason why he stepped through tires in those drills. That's exactly what he did, because he was hit behind the line of scrimmage initially. Then he was hit right at the marker and got through that. You're right. It just a wear down. You can't arm tackle at that point in time when you're leaning. It's a football term we call leaning downhill. After a while, when that arm goes out, he doesn't go down. If you kind of come at him with just a shoulder pad, he doesn't go down. And when you can't get off the field, Mark, you and I both know playing defense, you got to get off the field. And they couldn't do it last night. At the end, they couldn't.
And Trinity was turnover free for as pretty much in the game I was watching. They didn't punt maybe once the whole game. And again, that key turnover made a difference in the end result of the game. It was whoever had the ball last, and Ollie Gordon and the Trojans had it last, and they took care of business in an epic performance. And you know what, Kenny? Just all playoff, it seems like the best games have been at Globe Life Park. Overtime games,
Yeah.
close games, lots of scoring. I mean, look at Lovejoy and Mansfield Timberview Thursday. Just
Shootout.
slobber knocker type games, video game numbers being put up in high school football.
Who would have ever thought that the ballpark that we used to call the ballpark now is the home of playoff football in North Texas now? It looks like, especially with this pandemic, the way it's been, Jerry's World not being open all the time. It's been where you can get 3 games in on a day. And then also with us being able to play on Christmas Eve, play on the day after Christmas Eve, that opened up the element. And it's kind of like with with Ollie Gordon yesterday. I said he almost struck lightning yesterday because he was still in the game for him to keep giving him the ball. Most of the time, he maybe had 34 or 35 carries, but Trinity would have had a big enough lead. They knew that was the monster because they had to score each and every time, and Allen responded by scoring each and every time. That's why I was telling people yesterday, I'm not sure you're going to see 49 carries because somebody will probably have a big enough lead they're going to put them out of the game by that point in time. But 461 yards, I mean, that's old school. That's Hall days, man. Back in the 60s and the 50s, man. We're toting the rock. I mean, and it's not a wishbone. That's a 2-back attack. So I mean, everybody knows where the ball is going for him to still be able to create that much mileage. Man, that's a phenomenal effort. It really is.
Man, it's a Herculean effort. And
Superman.
this morning, guess what? TCU and Missouri reach out and offer Ollie Gordon right off the bat. I mean, I think that he's been proven that he was the man all year. He's been very steady. This offense has been very steady. And quietly, Trinity's been building and building and building up that momentum that now they're here in the game in the final against their arch rival, if you want to call it that, South Lake Carroll.
Lake Carroll. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because the first game that I did with Trinity this year, they played Prosper and he didn't play. He was still hurt. And so that was a huge difference because Trinity was trying to, they still were able to run the football, but you didn't have that dynamic back there in the backfield, that guy you game plan from the time he's on the schedule, and it gave him a different dynamic where Fonnie, the quarterback, Valentina, he still made some plays through the air just because you had that threat in the back. When they played Prosper, he didn't have that. And he had to kind of force some issues then at that point in time. And that's not really his game. He's more of a combined kind of guy. But, man, it was – I have not personally seen anybody do something like that before on the football. Now, have I read some of the old school days about some people doing that? Absolutely. But witness it with my own 2 eyes? No. No. And he could have had 56 or 7 carries if he wanted to. That's the thing. He wasn't tired.
Well, shout out to his conditioning. This was a top-notch performance. I mean, this is the stuff that people, like you said back in the day, you read about these type of performances and not see them on a stage this big. You maybe back in, a few years ago, Jonathan Gray with his playoff run back in the day in a state championship game as well with 8 touchdowns or so, beginning that Bearcat mystique, if you will. But this was a great performance, man. And shout out to Ollie Gordon. I will be reaching out to him and, in the future, man, we're going to try to get him on the show as well. Now, I also thought that the South Lake Carroll game, just to speak about Quinn Ewers coming back from an abdominal injury over a month and a half. He was a little rusty. I did watch that game, but he made key plays when he was able to do that. Also, this Martin defense was very, very tough. Made a lot of plays against he and the Dragons in that game. But I thought, what a defining moment is he took off and maybe ran 5 or 6 yards and took a good pop. And he got up and he was, beating his chest a little bit.
Yeah, he did.
I thought that was, key to let me know, hey, he's back.
That game, it was interesting. I thought it's time, like you could tell his timing was off with his wide receivers.
Right, exactly.
Wide receivers trying to get out of the breaks and trying to get off the DBs. You could tell that but he made a couple of throws there in the end zone. One of them was almost sidearm that was raw money.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's a 5-star throw right there.
Yeah.
The thing about that game is, and I did read this morning before I left, 25 penalties in that game, Mark. That was unreal. How many personal foul calls were in that game and holding calls were in that game. and roughing the kicker calls. I mean, Arlington Martin, if they did look at the film the very next day,
they gave it away.
Yes. They had to be killing themselves because their overzealousness or just not playing disciplined football cost them a shot at winning that game. Can I say for certain? But I mean, the last drive alone, 3rd down and a 4th down conversion on penalties for South Lake Carroll nonetheless. I mean, they're punting the ball when they rough the punter. So, I mean, they had to be killed. And then they get the ball to this 12-yard line and no sense of urgency knowing that the clock was still running. I think, or to the 8-yard line. I can't remember what. They got up slow, and I'm like, you're losing priceless seconds here. And I said, why? It seems like they just lost their cool, but we're still in the ball game the whole time. That's the thing I couldn't understand why. Because I think in the first quarter, Coach Wager, he called the team mean. Called everybody over the sidelines with 8 minutes left or whatever it was. I'm thinking, okay, well, these guys were a group. They know they don't need to cross that gray area. And they did it repeatedly. So, yeah, Martin's got to be killing themselves because they had South Lake Carroll on the ropes. Let's say that. I won't say they had them beat, but, boy, they sure had them on the ropes on that last drive there if they had a sense of – well, I can tell you, prime example, they get 8 yards on the rush, and it's a holding penalty.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm like, it was there for them to have. It really was. But for Quinn, I thought he was a little rusty, but he got that timing going in the second half that I thought was big. They started doubling up Brady, so that left number 6, open for South Lake Carroll. He made some plays. His name is I've forgotten his name at the point in time. And I thought that South Lake Carroll's defense did just enough, to kind of make it where they could. They always seemed like they had a little lead. Even when the Martin got the lead, they seemed like South Lake Carroll came back and answered, big field goals. I mean, he hit the 50-yarder one, I think, there, for South Lake Carroll in that game. But that was a good football game to watch, minus the referees not having control of that game. They did not have control of that game from the first quarter on, and that's what made it be a almost 4-hour game with no overtime. That's not right in high school.
I totally agree. I also think the clock management with under 8 minutes to go, their game plan was great. Mundell and the big time corner that they had going both ways. Number 8.
Number 8. Was it 8?
It's 8. Oh yeah, he's a sophomore. I was watching online at the time, and this young man was playing some great football. That offensive line was moving them. Mundell would come in and pass and kind of change the game plan up, so to speak, or the formations up. They came out in this like wing T formation. They had like 5 guys, and they get back. They were controlling the tempo. But then, like you said, they had offsides penalty, a couple penalties on defense to move the Dragons within field goal distance on 3 different occasions where they kicked field goals, and they went ahead by 1 or 2. And the Warriors, man, they had this game. I just think time management and ill-advised mental mistakes penalty-wise. How do you jump off sides on a field goal and give them first down? You just can't. That's not playoff football, and those guys know better than that. And I know that when they watch the film, they'll see that and make those adjustments. But now they can't because it's win or go home.
Let's go. Well, and running into the punter when he's
running into the punter.
His 20.
Right.
He's inside his 20. You're going to get good field position at this point. And you've got Mundell back there on the punt return, who is a great punt returner nonetheless as a starting quarterback.
A dynamite talent.
He reminds me of Bucky Richardson so much. I know a lot of people are going, who the heck's Bucky Richardson? So look him up at A&M. Hey, jack of all trades, went to the NFL as a quarterback, but played special teams in the NFL. He reminds me so much of him because he can do so much. And he's elusive. He's just elusive enough. He's not going to be Reggie Bush quick, but he's just elusive where he always seems to be leaning forward. Leaning forward for a guy that's not very big either. He's going Army. He's going Army, but I think he's going to have a heck of a career there. But I just hated the fact that it just seemed like the mistakes took them away from dictating that game. That's one that's going to be hard to sleep on.
Yeah, I came away shaking my head at the end of that game, just thinking that they left that game on the table. This was the time when you could take down when South Lake was, the Dragons were vulnerable with Ewers coming back kind of
Yes.
rusty. You know, he was just off a little bit. Brady Boyd, his top receiver going to Minnesota. You know, I was very impressed seeing a full game from him. He's as advertised. So, you know,
He's good. And
he's good
got speed.
and
He
got
got
speed.
speed.
He
Yeah.
got speed, and I like
Yes,
his
he
game.
does.
He's
Yeah.
physical. You have to have, you know, they kind of rolled coverage to him a couple times because they had a young corner over there on him sometime, and he was beating him. And like you said, that 5-star throw, that fade route to him was unbelievable.
That's when I said, you know what? You can teach a lot, but you can't
Teach that. Yeah, yeah. Again, this is Mark Henry on the Morning Mark Show with Kenny Matthews for FridayNightGlory.com, man. All right, Kenny, we're going to jump into H-Town versus D-Town just a little bit.
Yes.
And D-Town came out 2-0 in Region 2. Duncanville splattered Spring Westfield 56-0. I don't think we got to spend a lot of time on that. That defense is amazing. Just at the high school level, that's one of the top defenses in the country. And then last night, DeSoto outlasted Spring 27-21. Bishop Davenport, junior quarterback from Spring came out hot. You know, he surprised DeSoto in that game with his elusiveness. I think they underestimated him a little bit with their receivers out on the outside, Sims and those guys. It kind of woke up the Eagles a little bit. They were down, or it was tied at halftime, but they shut them out the second half.
Yeah. Remember,
And
14 nothing score.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. It raised some eyebrows. I was having a few conversations with a couple of people at that time, and I was just like, well, here's the thing. And they made Claude Mathis and those guys on defense made the adjustments here in the second half where Murphy and those guys kind of plugged those holes up, and they had a linebacker spying him, and they didn't do anything in the second half. And the Eagles advanced to take on Duncanville, a matchup everybody had been waiting on that was kind of postponed due to COVID at the end of the year. But now we get that epic matchup with Duncanville and DeSoto, two teams down the street from each other. These guys, you know, go to middle school together, play 7-on-7 together, everything. This is a colossal
that
matchup.
district in the 4th round.
Right now, we didn't even get to K-Salt and Cedar Hill yet. They up next. Give me your thoughts on this game.
Well, you know, I think that the one thing I will mention, and I'm not quite sure what, I mean, I know COVID is there, but I don't understand why everybody thought Kendrick Blackshire needed to prove anything this year, that he was back healthy from his injury. Because if you've seen him in the last month and a half now, possessed.
Dog mentality. Dog mentality.
Kendrick Blackshire is everything as advertised before injury of last year. And I mean, he's getting pick sixes. He is putting the wood to people. And it's because those front four are freeing up for him to go sideline to sideline again, which it was part of his game in the first place anyway. And that to me is the key of Duncanville's defense. As long as those front four keep doing what they're doing, they're gonna, to me, well, they'll be a jury's world again until that happens. Now, I will say this: I'm still not completely sold on the offense for Duncanville just yet. It seems still to be a little spotty for me for this late in the season. You know, I kept saying, well, they'll get better as things go on, get there. But they have their hiccups, I guess maybe is a good word to say for them on that. But as long as your defense is playing so well, you don't have to take chances, Mark. And I think now that's key, especially with the weather. You don't know if it's going to be hot, cold or windy, whatever may be the case. So you could play a field position game. And I think that's kind of what, but heck, yesterday's game, it didn't matter. That was blowout central. But I will have to give props though to DeSoto for being able to respond. I thought Murphy had an outstanding game for them yesterday, and talking about another defensive tackle that made a difference. He made a difference in that game. He became unblockable, which then allowed that speed for DeSoto to be able to kind of neutralize that. Not even neutral, basically stop it. Basically stop it at that point. And it gave him just enough time to get enough offense rolling for them. I think Adonis Stotts, is one of those guys that still, you keep waiting for that big breakout game in the playoffs. You keep thinking, it's gonna be there. It's not there just yet. But they still have so many weapons, and you and I both know that. And with Duncanville and DeSoto, I kind of agreed with them calling it off at the end of the regular season at that point in time, because it didn't matter. Duncanville was already the district champs. We were going through sweating COVID really tough during that period of time anyway, with the cancellations and all that. So it didn't really make any sense for them to play it. but it just builds more excitement for it now. You know, it's like we've added 6 weeks of anticipation to it. I mean, and so that's great for us because, you know, it leads to something there. Now, do I think DeSoto's going to win the game? No, I do not. It's not that I'm picking DeSoto to win, but I do think that Duncanville will be tested by DeSoto throughout that game. I don't anticipate a huge Duncanville win here at all. I think we're going to have a dogfight here for a while, as long as DeSoto, and this is the key for them to me, do not turn the ball over. It's okay to punt. It's okay to punt. Just don't shorten up that field for Duncanville, because if Duncanville's offense is a little spotty, if you shorten it up for them, they don't have to go very far to score.
Well, back to your Adonis Scott, when you were talking about him, I noticed that they kind of punted away from him last night because he has taken 3 or 4 back this year.
Right.
The coverage was they made sure they spread out last night. They tried to kick it away from a corner kick to him. So, you know, shout out to Adonis. You know, he's one of those species that they have. If he gets daylight, he is gone. He doesn't need much. But they did kind of kick away from him last night, and I kind of agree.
That's a great
point. Also shout out to my boy Crook, right next to him, man. That dude is playing some lights out ball too at the linebacker position. You got 2 of the better linebackers in the country on one defense, and that front 4, like you said, is just unimaginable. I think, you know, we've been talking about this all year. You know, we're looking at that North Shore Duncanville rematch 3 times, the 3rd time in a row. It's headed that way, in my opinion. We've been saying it all year. We've been saying it all year.
I think the only thing that stops it is one of the quarterbacks get hurt, you know, kind of like in Jackson deal last year. That's the only thing I can see that will deprive us of that, because as good as, you know, I saw that stat last night. I didn't realize, you know, North Shore has only lost 1 game in the last 3 years. You know, that was the Coach Roberts, you know, first game of last year. And then Zach Evans gets, suspended for 4 games and all that. They were kind of in a funk that year. But since then, they have rolled off, 13 wins this year and 15 last year. So, you do the math, that's 28 in a row and they've been doing it in very impressive fashion. I mean, there really is. Or maybe Demetrius Davis, a sophomore year, is kind of the bus driver. He wasn't the bus driver last year. Now he's clearly the leader on this team, where maybe Flagg and those guys were kind of the leaders last year. This is no question. This is Davis's team this year. And, I mean, Coach Keys, the job he's done there in the last 4 years is just, 3 years is just, it's unreal. To keep getting those guys to keep answering the bell when the bullseye's on your back, you always know that with Twitter and all the information is there, you would just think that you would have one of those games where you don't show up or didn't properly prepare. It's just not happening, man. They're just going out taking care of business, and guys are wearing fitted caps in the 3rd quarter on the sidelines.
Well, I will tell you this. I did see the game against Tompkins on Thursday, and they had a little bit more of I guess what you want to say, a little bit more of a contest, but it was still really much a blowout. Tompkins came in undefeated. They beat Katy this year. Jalen Milroe was having one of the best years of his year. Sherman Smith, Marquise Shoulders, and those guys have been balling out. So, but I will say that Demetrius Davis did not have Shadrack Banks last year. And now they even got him this year with with some of the guys on that offensive line that they plugged in. In H-Town, they call them the show. And they are, as advertised, every week, they're taking the best punch from every team that they play. They're not getting a break each week. They just are dominant. And the only other team that's been as dominant, minus the IMG loss, has been Duncanville.
Yes, absolutely. They're almost carbon copy of how to big guys up front, athletic offensive linemen, athletic defensive tackles, not just big. I think you get that confused sometimes. People say, "Oh, they're big up front." Well, you can be big up front, but that doesn't.
Can you move?
Right?
Can you move?
Right. That's what I said. These guys are athletic big guys. This is a SEC type mentality. On that, where they're athletic. That's the biggest difference between them and everybody else that's playing football in the state of Texas. I don't know how they're breeding them. I don't know what they're doing that way. But, man, they're doing something right, man. You got to keep feeding it because, man, that's the difference. You're Galena Park. I mean, they had the one offensive line he decommitted from Auburn. I can't remember exactly where he was going. But, you got guys going to Power 5 conferences or whatever they want to go to school that are in the trenches. And you and I both know if you got those guys up front, man, it makes everything else so much easier.
Now, speaking of guys up front, let's shift to 6A D2 real quick. Denton Guyer and Prosper. Prosper being a surprise team this year with an 8-3 record, but Denton Guyer, Eli Stowers and those guys, big offensive line, big road graders, going all the way back to the KG Cobb days. These guys are still doing it, man. Touch on that one real quick.
Yeah, the thing about it with Guyer, you just didn't know with Webb taking over the beginning of the year, and we didn't know if Eli was going to be healthy at the beginning of the year. There was so many rumors about being 6 or 7 games in the season, and we thought that the kid that played in the championship game would be the start at the beginning. But his recovery was great this offseason. In the offseason, it was so much faster than anybody anticipated. And it took Eli a couple games to get settled, but now he's back to that dual threat, which I think that's the key for Guy. And if he is the dual threat guy, not sitting in the pocket, not afraid to get out there and run and do everything, then I think that limits them. But that big offensive line, like you said, man, is really good. And they're doing all this without their best defensive player in Deuce Harmon, who hasn't been playing in the playoffs. And that's a guy that going to A&M, top 250 kid in the state, and you're still rolling. That just talks about the depth that's at Guyer. It's unreal to think that you can lose your only coach you've had there that's won state championship, there at Guyer, and then you can just bring in Mr. Webb, and you haven't really lost. You lost to Denton Ryan. That is your only blemish on the record this year. Okay. I think you can live with that because Denton Ryan, we both know what Denton Ryan is about. But it's fun. I look at that little triangle of Braswell, Ryan, and Guyer, and I go, man, that's a lot of offense. That's a lot of talent.
A lot of talent, man. And I don't think they get enough credit here in the DFW area. Maybe some people consider that out of DFW, but I don't. Like you said, you can toss a quarter in the middle of Denton, and you got Power 5 kids right there. They've been doing that for me over the last decade, in my opinion.
Yeah,
the Denton County is stopped. Yeah, right.
And the granddaddy of Denton is like, can you just give us the ones you don't want? We'll be okay. But then you got Salina, cherry picking some of those guys over there. That little quadrant, man, has got some really high end, like you said, Power 5. And it's just really interesting to see how that all kind of works out every year after year. But all I know is that you graduate a lot of good players, but there's a whole lot more left in the stable, man. There is. But, yeah, that should be a really good game, Mark. I'm kind of looking forward to that game because I think that's a game that maybe is a little under the radar with all the other games here. But that's probably going to be the most competitive game, I think.
Definitely, man. I think that, like we said, Prosper's been a team that's been flying under the radar a little bit. Again, it's just me and Kenny Matthews for FridayNightGlory.com. We're talking regional final action here, deep in the state playoffs here on the On Your Mark Show. It's powered and sponsored by Epic Sports Apparel, 105.4 RPWP, thepulseradio.com. Now, Kenny, we talked about the District of Doom. 3 teams still left in the playoffs. Cedar Hill and that man K-Salt. This guy's been playing unbelievable football all year, really the last 2 years since Shane Lawrence left. That was the last great quarterback over at Cedar Hill. This guy came in and he's been wrecking shop. I had a chance to check out K-Salt. Now, he had over 200 yards rushing this week. He's had 150, 160 yards passing, but he was in the end zone a lot against Tomball Memorial. They didn't, seem to be able to contain him. Yeah.
Yes, 4 TDs yesterday.
4 TDs, man. He went in and he took care of his business. He was
middle about 40-something rides.
Man.
That was a bolt of lightning, man.
Man, he is playing out of his mind this year. Now, he's got a good test here with Rockwall Heath. They can score as well. 11-2 on the season. This is a Saturday game. Again, Globe Life seems to be getting the best games. Talk about this game just a little bit.
Yes, well, I know K-South. I got to see him on Fox Sports Southwest last night when I got home from the game, and I talked about his 14 like we talked about. That burst up the middle, man. Nobody was catching him, but he's got the swag, which, with him being with True Buzz, that was one of the things that Coach Moss and Brooks were saying. It's okay to have swag, but it's also you need to be team oriented. Now he's got swag being a leader this year. And I think that's been the biggest growth in him as being a leader. And it started at the end of the, 7-on-7 with the True Buzz guys and that. Coach Brooks and Moss talked about that at the, in the media that they had right before the season started. And it's just carried over. I mean, I think he knew that this was his senior year. He knew he was going to University of Tennessee. He didn't have to worry about recruiting and all that. And he was able to focus on what was and the task in hand, and that was to try to win district. Now, obviously, came up a little short there, but I mean, he has been unbelievable. I mean, it seems like he just does whatever it takes to win. If it's through the air, no problem. If I need to use my feet, no problem. Think about all the games he's won at the end of the game with his feet. He scored a lot of TDs in the fourth quarter this year that's put games away. So for him, I think it's been wonderful to see that maturation from just being a very good athlete playing the position to now going, it's okay to throw the ball out of bounds. It's okay. We'll live for another play. And, I mean, that's what you like to kind of see. And I know you and I, we kind of like seeing the quarterbacks let grow to get that. Live for another play. You don't have to force it. Don't be Superman here. It's okay. We got 3rd and 7. We got this. And so, yeah, that district, man, is just, I mean, how many times you get, I'd like to know how many times you get 3 teams from one district playing in the 4th round of the playoffs. I'd like, in the state of Texas, since they've gone to 4. That's the stat that I'd like to look up to see how many times that happened. And frankly, you've got a great shot at having 2 of them going to the 5th round. I mean, we really do. I mean, we're eliminating one just because they're playing each other. So, I mean, how many times you get 2 teams of the same district still playing out? I mean, this is the one thing that gets me pumped up, Mark. We're blessed to be in the Metroplex to see all of this talent, and then we're only 3 hours north of where there's another hotbed of a lot of talent in Houston. I mean, we don't realize that. It's not even talking about East Texas. It's not talking about all that. We are just blessed that we've been immersed around a lot of Power 5 talent. And you feel bad when you forget somebody. But for Rockwell Heath, I've watched them 3 times this year. The pace that they play at is phenomenal. Now, yes, they did lose the real Zach Evans. I know he's not going to be playing, but you saw Preston Landis play a big game yesterday. Jay Flair has been just, since game 1 against South Lake Carroll, he's been unstoppable. Nobody's figured out how to stop him. I love the pace that Coach Spradlin has them. I was worried about their defense at the beginning of the year against South Lake Carroll, giving up 72 or 73, whatever that was, the first game of the year. But they came around, they started playing. They had the one heartbreak loss to Rockwall, their neighbor. But that's going to be a big test for them because you're going to have to outscore them. You're not holding Heath to 21 points. That's not happening. You're going to have to score, to me, at least 28 to 31 points to win this game because they just have that many weapons where, I'm sorry, you don't have enough athletes, I don't think, to control all of that. Then they got the big offensive tackle. I believe he's going to Oklahoma State. That's on the right. I mean, they're loaded offensively. So that, to me, is another one of those very games that, man, you need to go check them out. But you better bring your scorecard with you because it's going to go up and down the field, man. It is. But I'm looking forward to that. That's one of the games that I was thinking about trying to get up to. I just, on that game. But, I mean, that's for a 4th round matchup. State of UIL, they got that one right.
Definitely. I mean, I think this is a game that you're going to see a lot of points put up, just like we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks. Now, this is the next game that we're going to talk about real quick, Kenny. Red Oak, Mansfield Summit, 2 teams that nobody really thought was going to be there. I happened to see the last couple of minutes of the Red Oak versus Lubbock Coronado game because somebody sent me a message. It was in overtime.
Yeah.
And Red Oak took care of business. They advanced 42-41. They missed the extra point. Lubbock Coronado did. Yeah, it was blocked. That's right. It was blocked. It was blocked.
The point. Yes,
and the Hawks move on to the next round, man, facing Mansfield Summit. Both teams get to be local. They don't have to go out nowhere to play. That's a big game.
Mark, that's the most surprising fourth round game. If you would have told me that at the beginning of the year, I'd have laughed you right out the gym, man. I saw Red Oak at the beginning of the year. They were struggling. I saw, Summit, but I think they lost to Timberview at the beginning of the year. I think it was the first game of the year. I just kept thinking, all right, Summit's good. I knew they had, I liked their wide receivers at Summit. I was thinking, all right, but it still didn't seem like it was flowing where I thought they're going to make a deep run in the playoffs. And lo and behold, you look up, the two-headed monster at quarterback at Red Oak is working.
It's working.
A lot of people were skeptical. A lot of people skeptical that was going to work. It's working. Each has had their moments too in big games, so you can't say, well, one's carrying the load and the other one's chipping in. No, each one of them had. And I think the first overtime, if I'm correct, didn't both Red Oak and they didn't score.
No.
If I'm thinking, they had a missed field goal, right?
Yes. Both teams did not score in the first overtime, and Red Oak took back over and they went down and scored.
Yes, so they get the TD, but then they come back and they give up the TD, and I
can't block the extra point.
How does that? I can't imagine what that bus ride feels like that you blocked an extra point to win in overtime. I mean, I'm sure that bus just felt like it was on a plane going back to Red Oak yesterday. But you have to be in. The only thing that scares me a little bit about Red Oaks is still the defensive side of the football. That's been, to me, their big, that's been the thing that's been troubling for me on that point. I always thought they can outscore. So that means almost the offense has got to be flawless as in not turning the ball over. Because, if you've got a suspect defense and you're down 7 and you give up a turnover, it could be down 14, which means you're down 2 serves in this day and age of football. And that makes it hard. That makes it hard to do. But if that's the game is, to me, who runs the football in that game, Mark? Whoever can get some yardage running the football will win that game. That's my caveat there.
Well, then you spoke about it, those two quarterbacks that are playing, Joshua Irvin and Chris Parsons. I think that says a lot to those two kids that they're making it work because they're two alpha males. Joshua Irvin's been starting for 3 years. Parsons comes in and moves in. They haven't missed a beat. That coaching staff has meshed those two guys together. I think they work well together. They're getting it done. They're in the next round against Mansfield Summit, possibly playing to go to state. What does that say about those?
They're one. The game is one game from state.
One game.
I can't fathom to think that's going to be that they can be in state. But like you said, I mean, flying on the radar, but they just took care of their business. They took care of their business. They didn't shout out, we're not getting, a lot of people, we're not getting respect and all that. You didn't hear any of that. We're not getting respect. You didn't hear anybody say, nobody's not covering us and all that. They just went about their business is what you're supposed to do in that situation. Don't bring negative attention to you. Just go about your business. Keep winning.
Well, that also says that those kids and that coaching staff didn't quit. Special teams is always overlooked, and for them to block a field goal, an extra point, that says they don't quit, they don't die.
Yeah, because you're right. You're thinking, all right, it's third overtime. We got to go for 2.
Third, exactly what I was thinking.
Going forward. Right. No, somebody said, you know what? I'm going to get after and block this, and they did. I mean, another very valid point, Mark. Agree with you wholeheartedly.
All right, now let's slide to the big one here in 5A D1 that everybody's probably talking about. And we spoke a little bit about these guys off camera before we started here. Again, this is Kenny Matthews, FridayNightGlory.com. Here on the On Your Mark show, Den Ryan, the Raiders go on and take care of business 27-7 over a talented East Texas squad, Longview, that dominated Lancaster the week before, which was a very athletic and experienced team as well. But Den Ryan, the Bear, was unleashed. In my opinion, he dominated. We're talking about Bear Alexander, class of 2022, one of the top defensive linemen in the state, definitely in the country, in my opinion. Dominated. Now, Billy Bowman and Jatavian Sanders get most of the headlines along with Seth Hennigan. Bear Alexander, in my opinion, was the difference in that game last night.
I told him when he was eligible, I said the rich get richer and the linebackers just recorded 10 more tackles a game because the Bear is going to clog that middle. And I said, you're going to have linebackers with Anthony Hill's going to be running free, clean looks. And I mean, that defense is absolutely dominant.
Shout out to DJ Arkansas as well. He played a well of a game for the Raiders as well.
Well, you got both. You got Austin and Bowman at the corners. You got, I mean, it's just, is it Jordan? Jordan Austin, right? I believe that's what. Yeah. And yes. You can't pick a weakness there, and then you may have one. You have probably a top 100 player in 2022 in Mr. Hill that's running around over there too. And I'm thinking you can lose a Drew Sanders and your defense could actually be better.
Wow. That's saying something, ain't it?
That's saying something, dude.
I think that shouts, that speaks volumes to the legacy and the overall program that Coach Hennigan has built over there. I mean, you and I covered a lot of games when they had Spencer Sanders and Gabe Douglas and those guys, Amani Bailey. And they were, the two times that they lost to Highland Park, once when Spencer Sanders got, he tore his knee up that year, they still were right there in those games. This is just a program now, and it's bordering on the line of the Highland Parks, the South Lake Carrolls, as far as, and maybe they haven't won the state championship. That's what's eluding them to be on the levels of those guys, historically. But every year these guys are in this particular category, amongst guys like us, as they can win it. I think this is their year. Now they're competing against a great Highland Park team and Braden Shager and those guys. This is going to be a great battle again.
Football too.
Globe Life must have a magnet for these games this year because they got another good one.
Yes, they do. And Highland Park, to me, is the underrated aspect of all that is those two running backs can run the football for them. They can run the football. They can play a little smash mouth if they need to be. They're not all flair and getting out and getting people out in space and all that. They're lining up. The big lineman is going, I believe he's going to Stanford, I believe it was. I mean, they can load up and say, let's knock some people off the line of scrimmage. And that's been one of the things I think that Highland Park may have been missing the last couple years. I thought they had that John Stevens Jr. year. I thought that they had the good offensive line where they can knock some people off the football. But the thing that they always have is what we always say, and I'll go to my grave with this. Anytime Highland Park steps on a football, I know they got an advantage. That man in the fedora. I mean, period. There's not anybody out coaching that man on the fedora. They made Lone Star one-dimensional. I think Lone Star had 27 yards rushing. And that's Jaden Dixon, who took care of business against them last year in the third round and the fourth round in the playoffs last year. So, I mean, they kind of was circle that game saying we've lost to a Texas team in the last 3 years only once, and Lone Star is the team that beat us twice. I think they kind of circled that last week. So to be interested now if you're not thinking about that. But the man in fedora will have them ready to play. But I do know one thing. I said, I think that Highland Park can make enough plays that they can make that game interesting. I'm not calling for an upset, but I think it's going to be a little closer than maybe that line that may come out Denton Ryan against Highland Park. But I still think it's Denton Ryan. I think that there's the lose. We saw they lost the first championship game. Spencer got hurt. Second time, they made it a little bit closer in that game. Obviously, they got over the hump last year. Blues, had a shot at the end of the game in the state championship there against Shadow Creek. Drew Sanders got a hand on it, couldn't pull it in. Do you see that the same group and now it says, all right, our next progression is to hoist that trophy over our heads at Jerry's World, and they've got the talent to do it. JT Sanders, your UT boy, is just making ridiculous catches week after week after week. And then he's going, all right, Hut, I'm in the backfield. Chasing somebody.
They put him in the Wildcat yesterday, Kenny, which was great. Shows his versatility, and he was very elusive. Then he just did his normal week to week. He grown man the corner for on the sideline. I was like, what else can he do? This guy gets all the headlines with him and Billy Bowling. But, I've been reading some things. He does this in practice. He practices. He works on these things.
Right. That's what he said. If there is 36 players in the country better than him, please show me them.
Line them up. Line them up.
Show me there it is. I just don't. I said it's not like he's doing it at a low classification. He's doing it on the
Highest level.
Yeah. And with everybody game planning against him.
For him. Right.
And he's making plays, and it doesn't matter which side of the football it is. I bet you can kick field goals if he wanted to.
I remember Kenny. We covered him down there when he was a freshman, and he was tall then, but he's added some bulk since then, and he looked like he was grown then. He's a basketball player as well.
Yes.
So I think he really decided football was going to be his thing once he started to fill out, and he probably had some people tell him, "Hey, dude, you can play on Sundays if you continue to grow," which he has. I mean, it's amazing. He's amazing.
It was funny. We did the Didn't Run the Colony basketball game, and I saw the roster that had Jatavius Sanders on there. I go, man, you guys ain't getting him until late January. I said, he's going deep in the playoffs. He's a man. I saw him at Billy Bowen's signing, and I got to talk to him a little bit there, and I just looked at his size, and I mean, it's just I call them dogs. And if you have enough of those dogs like the University of Alabama, there's a reason why they keep competing for championship, because you need some dogs.
Right.
And he's just a flat out, put me somewhere, I'm going to make a play. Doesn't matter where. I bet you can be back there throwing the shotgun if
he did it yesterday. He ran the ball, but he was in the Wildcat on the goal line, and he went in and scored. But speaking of Alabama getting dogs, our last matchup that we'll talk about before we get off features those guys, those Bearcats, the Alito Bearcats against Lovejoy. This will be a game at Globe Life as well. Lovejoy's undefeated. I had a chance to see Alito the last couple of weeks. Shout out to JoJo Earl. That's the reference back to Alabama. They just continue. I believe Nick Saban has a home over there somewhere. He pulled it out with Jace last year, and he's been getting a couple of runs. If you had a chance to watch Alabama,
who's that junior safety Alito? Is it he next year?
BJ Allen, and he has a young brother over there at corner. That's a playmaker. But the man that's been pacing, JoJo Earl. He gets most of the headlines over there, but DeMarco Roberts has been a man among boys, I would say, the last 5 games. That Alito offensive line, I'm going to have to reach out to Coach Wood and Coach Buck over there. I just want to know what light seems to turn on at this time of the year where the Bearcats seem to become dominant on the offensive and defensive line. Those guys have turned it up. Now, this is the first year they hadn't had a Bishop at quarterback in a long time. We've been covering these guys for a while. Jake Bishop and Jace, I happen to see those guys, come through middle school. And JoJo Earl as well, because, I happen to have a son that was playing middle school ball at the same time, and we got a chance to see those guys 7-on-7. So I've seen these guys, but DeMarco Roberts now is taking over at running back. Last year, he was a all-world cornerback. He's going to Lamar down there in Beaumont. This young man has had the last 2 weeks for sure. He had 4 TDs last week. He ran all over Frisco up in the Star this past week. This guy is a man that's possessed running that ball behind that offensive line. The Bearcats seem to be on the way to trying to get number 10, but standing in the way is Lovejoy, an explosive team that beat a very physical Timberview team. Timberview just couldn't score enough points, but Lovejoy took care of business.
Man, I go to it all this, Mark. I can make it real simpler. Pedigree. Those guys, they know that it's almost they're born with their birthright now in Alito that they're going to get a ring. And I think it breeds all the way down to those levels, and they wait their turn. Where a lot of high schools, they don't wait their turn and want to go to someplace else, go to a private school, whatever, play early and all that other stuff and be the star. Even when DeMarco and JoJo Earl, you interview them, they don't act like stars. They are very humble. The first thing DeMarco said yesterday is what? The big guys up front. He said that on Fox Sports Southwest. He said it in my interview last year. The interview before that, the week before that, the same thing. He always leads off of that. Coach Buck has got them, and prior to that, they got them bleeding into that talent. And I think their turning point was when they beat Timberview this year, when they got down early, and they said, you know what, hey, we haven't lost a district game in Sister Nixon, was head president, and they probably said, hey, they got hit in the mouth a little bit. And since then, they've been a physical football team. And they've been a very physical team. And I mean, you think of Alito being balanced and getting some big plays out in space and all that and running the football. They've just been basically lining people up on the football and
mauling them. They've been mauling them. And Marco Roberts he's been feeding into that. He gets behind those guys. He picks his holes. He's elusive. He can go the distance. He's physical. And in between the tackles, his cuts and his vision. I had a really chance to key in on him this past game against Frisco and the week before. Great vision. And I think he's an unsung guy that didn't get a lot. He shared the backfield the last couple of years with Jace McClendon, who was, all world, got all the limelight, most of the publications. Whereas he waited his turn, like you said. He played on the defense. They put him wherever he returned kicks. He was already on the map in a sense, but now he's the man in that backfield, and he's taking full advantage of it.
I think that's probably the biggest thing in coaching now is getting kids to buy into the team concept all the way around. It's media hounds like us and Twitter and everybody telling them how good they are all the time and wanting to do interviews with this site or that site or whatever it is to get those guys to buy into the team concept, Mark. If you can get that, especially when you have elite talent, or way above average talent from top to bottom, that goes to Coach Buck and his staff, man, especially when you lose your quarterback the scrimmage before the season starts. That was replacing him. I mean, that could be devastating for programs. But Alito, we'll just slide somebody else in. We'll struggle a little bit maybe in the beginning, but as the season keeps going, we're going to get better and better and better. And Coach Buck said, well, hey, let me put Joe Earl here in this Wildcat every time we get inside the 20. He's going to rip off an 11 or 12-yard TD, and we're going to be good. And I'm going to sit him back there in the defensive secondary and let him make some plays back there. But, yeah, I think DeMarco, if you get a chance, us in the media, we get lucky, but DeMarco Roberts is a wonderful interview. He's just got a genuine heart, and he is just fun to talk to, and you can tell he's having fun playing football. It's a throwback on that side. He's really having a lot of fun, but he doesn't put any of that on himself. He just says, get me through the line of scrimmage, and then I'll make plays.
And I'll do the rest. Just open the gate for me, and he's going to come in. I mean, it's one of, like Mark Jackson says, Mama, there goes that man, and you can't stop it.
Absolutely, Mark. Well said, brother.
Well, man, Kenny, I appreciate you jumping on the On Your Mark show this week, man. This will be out Wednesday, man, on 105.4 RPWP, pulseradio.com, man. Kenny, give your social medias out to where people can follow you on FridayNightGlory.com. He's one of the best in the game, good friend, family, man. We've been doing this a while, and I appreciate you jumping on with me, brother.
Yeah, you can always get me at Twitter at Kenny Matthews, all lowercase. You can always catch me on FridayNightGlory.com. I mean, there's a slew of stuff over there with my name on there. I don't even try to count anymore on that anyway. But I always tell kids, and this is the main thing I always tell. I said, kid, listen, my IM on Twitter is open 24/7. I said, if you ever send me something, you're going to get a response from me really quickly. And I said, I think us in media, we need to take, nobody gets priority. Everybody gets the same treatment. So if you're a third string lineman or you're the first string lineman, if you send me something on Twitter or as a video, whatever you want me to do, man, I'm always going to retweet it, say something about it. I just don't retweet it without putting a comment on it, because I think you got to put a little personal touch sometimes on retweets. But just do that. I mean, I can't promise you anything, but I think the more you get that thing out to people, somebody may see it. And I said, the more effort you put into it, the more people you put into it, the better odds for you that somebody's going to run across it. I said, it's a numbers game. It's just like sales or anything else. It's a numbers game. There's 100. Maybe one person might be that big dog for you. You just never know. So, yeah, that's how you can get in touch with me. And obviously, I do the same for Mark. I mean, people always ask me, who's Mark's show, whatever. I'll send that over, the information to them, because I think that what you do, especially on your one show about the Texas hotspot, prospects, I think that's a wonderful piece for kids, and it's for those unnoticed gems, kind of like DeMarco Roberts. That to me is a wonderful forum. I want people to use that because it's there available, and that's what you're tailored into. I know you like the big uglies up front, but you like the underdogs. Mark always been that underdog guy. So, I mean, you guys got to utilize that. But, man, anytime you need me on the show, Mark, I'm in. I can always call last minute, and I'll get you in, dog.
Well, definitely, man. It's definitely family over here, man. And, I know tough things this weekend, man. And, we there with you, man, down true and true. Shout out to the guys at True Buzz. Yes. This weekend, tough loss there, man. But we're gonna be here for you guys, man. And the On Your Mark show is just one. It's just one part of it, man. It's just one part of it.
And I wanted to give props to the University of Utah. What they did last night, that was really awesome with the showing of the Utes, and putting his deal on the scoreboard, leaving the Jordan on the scoreboard last night, and the Lightning up there at the stadium. I thought that was a really nice tribute. Something that we here in Texas, we didn't see unless you really were looking for it last night, but that's something that, I actually am really good friends with the leading scorer, the leading rusher at the University of Utah, Eddie Johnson. As a matter of fact, I'm real good friends with him, and I got to touch base with him yesterday before the Gonzaga game. And, he was like, man, everybody kept telling me, I mean, to meet this guy, he may be breaking my records. He may be breaking my records here at Utah. But he said COVID restricted that, so he never got a chance to meet him. So he was really down and out about that. But, he told me that community up in Utah is really, really down. But he said they all said glowing things about Ty. And I think that's what – that to me, that's better because we knew how raw he was early.
We knew how had a chance to see him. Shout out to Coach Moss and those guys over there, and Leonard, Coach Brooks, man. Hey, they always invite us out. Always open big arms for us all the time.
Always.
For myself and Matt on the Top Texas Prospect Show and FridayNightGlory.com, and that's where we broke into this thing, man. Yeah. Those guys have always, so we've seen these guys mature and grow into the players that they were. Right.
Another one. I mean,
yeah. Came through the ranks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we all knew Kendrick was a man from day one.
Yeah, that's kind of understood. That one was kind of understood.
Everybody else a while to grow up.
Yeah. But most definitely, man. Man, really anytime, man. Here on Your Mark Show, 105.4 RPWP, man. I appreciate it.
Put me on when y'all put a link on when y'all have it up. Then
yes, sir.
And that way I'll get it out to everybody that can. And
yes, sir. Always do. Brother. Again, appreciate you have, man, appreciate you. Kenny Matthews, FridayNightGlory.com on the Roundtable Discussion this week. We're going to go to the next segment here on the On Your Mark Show, 105.4 RPWP. We'll be right back.